I parked on the gravel loop and watched the wedding through the glass door like a man watching a play he was never cast in. The hall glowed. Laughter moved across the lawn. My black polo felt wrong against my skin. I had the valet badge on my chest and a name tag I had not earned. I breathed in oil and mint gum and the smell stuck to my throat. Marcus came out wearing the tux he had been building himself into for years. He moved the way people move when they know a room is theirs. He smiled for the guests. For a beat he looked my way. He checked me with his eyes like counting a list. He did not come to the car. He did not touch my arm. A bridesmaid asked for a photo and I raised the camera. My hands held the lens like a promise I would not break. I smiled in the way they taught the valets to smile. I kept the smile on my face while my chest hollowed. Someone handed me an envelope. It was thin and pale. I opened it in the parking lot under a street lamp that made the gravel glitter like tiny teeth. The note said, "You are not welcome." The letters in the note were careful. The paper smelled like cheap stationery and perfume. My shoes dug into the gravel. The night smelled like cut grass and hotel cologne. I told myself it was a joke. I looked at the invitation someone had handed me months before. Their names were printed together in the center. My name was nowhere. I did not push through the door. I stood and watched the light move across the curtains. A man in a suit asked if I wanted another shift. I said yes because a paycheck is a shelter. I put the note in my pocket and felt it like a hot coin burning against my thigh. The grief of being left out sat beside the smell of oil on my fingers. I slept on the couch at the shop and woke with the smell of polish and glue in my mouth. My phone had missed calls from numbers I used to call when something broke. I returned the calls and got my sister. She said tonight was perfect. Her voice slid over the words like practiced glass. I asked if I could come by and she said tomorrow. The word closed like a door. I heard the click and the house behind it. I felt the old pattern surface. Marcus had always wanted to be seen. I had learned to listen. I drove to his old neighborhood. The glove box held a receipt I had found earlier when I cleaned his car for the wedding. It was for flowers and a custom cake. The name on the receipt matched his and hers. There was a small line at the bottom in a clerk's hand where someone had written guest list amendment. My name had been written and then crossed out. The cross out was not angry, it was neat. It was the way someone erases you without looking. There was a faint fingerprint near the corner. The paper made my mouth go dry. I put the receipt between my teeth in the dark and tasted the ink. I read the numbers until they looked like part of a code. I remembered Marcus as a boy kicking a ball at the garage while I read. He wanted applause. I wanted my pages not to be closed. In our family, favors were currency and ledger lines decided worth. Marcus learned to spend other people's kindness. I learned to hide where my name did not belong. I started to watch the house. I learned which curtains opened and which did not. I counted breakfast plates at the table. I timed the mail carrier. I walked up the lane and smelled wet leaves and old paint on the trim. Marcus moved among people like light. He read the room and gave the version everyone wanted. He spoke about family in public and practiced distance at home. He gave a speech at the reception and said family is everything. The crowd cheered. My heart felt like something walked over. I began to collect small things as a way of making sense. A napkin from the reception with a smear of lipstick, a program where my name was missing, a voice message with Marcus laughing and saying he wanted to keep the peace. Each item alone was small. Together they stacked like bricks. The pile looked like a door I could either walk through or use to wall myself in. I kept the receipt folded beneath a wrench in my toolbox. I carried it like a talisman. The cross-out became an argument and not a mistake. I walked into the family attorney's office the week after and asked for the will. The woman at the desk looked like she held secrets and practiced silence. She told me wills are private. I told her I was family. She smiled, but her eyes did not soften. She slid a single photocopy across the desk. My name was not on it. There was a clause about disposition among heirs and a lawyer's scribble in the margin with a date. The photocopy smelled of office air. Paper like that holds a chill. I left with the pages folded under my jacket, feeling like a thief even though I paid for the copies. The margins where people make small changes looked like tiny wounds. My life had been measured by the edges of other people's forms. I called friends and some said let it go. They said he is your brother and the sentence landed like a rule. It felt like a lid sliding into place. I could not accept that sliding. I saw favorites and ledgers and the way our mother had once kept score with favors. I went to Eldon, the neighbor who used to fix our fence. He had a slow, clean way of speaking. He listened. He said never confuse a quiet life for consent. He handed me a small key and told me to keep it until I needed to unlock something. I put the key in my palm and felt a second heartbeat. He taught me to look at corners where people hide things. 2 weeks passed and I learned how to wait without wasting myself. Waiting needs small rituals. I learned when the house emptied and when it filled. I learned the rhythm of Marcus's calls and the way he said loyal in texts. He called me responsible. He called me loyal. The words felt like wire around my chest. I met Vanessa, a bridesmaid who had been at our family events for years. She was quiet in a way that made what she said hit harder. She told me about a small wooden box in our mother's study and a locked safe. She said she had overheard Marcus arguing with our mother. He talked about family legacy and laughed in a way that made the word private. Vanessa handed me a photo of the study. On the desk, under a stack of ledgers, a wooden box sat with letters carved into its top. The letters matched the key Eldon had given me. My hands shook while I looked at the picture. The study looked colder in the photo, as if time had been carved out of it. I took the train and walked up the lane with the smell of wet leaves and diesel. The house looked smaller than memory makes it. I told the woman at the door I had come for the family papers. She scanned my hands and my shirt and let me in like she let in errands. The study was cooler than the rest of the house. The wooden box sat like a low heart beneath ledgers. The key fit with a small click. Inside were letters tied with string and an envelope with a name I knew but had not been ready to see in ink. It was a trust agreement with Marcus's initials embossed. The handwriting on the margins matched the clerk's on the receipt. A date had been scribbled. The date was the day our father left and the day a ledger started to look like a map. The letters read like people moving around numbers and favors. There was rhetoric about contribution and wages and service. Marcus had written in one margin, "We cannot have one brother who ruins the brand." The word brand made me ill. He crossed out my name with a clean pen. The crossing out was a small execution. I did not know how to confront a life made of favors and contracts. I did not know how to aim words at the ledger lines where my worth had been redacted. I knew how to gather proof. I bought a cheap recorder and set meetings that looked like obligations. I asked questions in a flat tone and people answered like they were safe. I recorded a vendor who said they had memoed my name off lists. I recorded Marcus at a small fundraiser talking about keeping things tidy and protecting the legacy. The files felt raw. They were not elegant, they were small rooms where people forgot how much they were being watched. I almost backed down the night the attorney called. She said I was making trouble. Her voice tried to be calm. I pressed the phone to my chest until it hurt. I thought about Eldon's key and the taste of the receipt. I thought about being a man who learned to disappear and the cost of disappearing. I kept the recorder on. I planned a confrontation like one plans a harvest. It took a week of quiet work and long afternoons. I chose a town hall meeting where Marcus had agreed to speak about a charity. He liked these things because they let him be public and benevolent at once. I sent an invite to the press in the name I had used for years at volunteer meetings. I put a folder together with copies and with a recorder labeled Inheritance Talk. On the day of the meeting, the room smelled of coffee and paper. Marcus sat under a light in the front row, smiling the way a man smiles when a crowd forgives him in advance. I walked to the microphone and my hands were steady. I said I was not invited to my brother's wedding. The sentence fell like a stone into a pool. People rustled. I opened my folder, I read receipts and showed the cross out. I played the recordings. The room went quiet in the way water goes quiet when something heavy sinks. Marcus laughed at first. He tried to call it a misunderstanding. I watched his face do the work of covering. I watched him take color from his face. He tried a line about business decisions. He tried to make it sound like ledger work and not exile. Vanessa stood and told the room about a call where Marcus said we need to handle him. A woman from the florist stood and produced her pad with orders. The handwriting on the pad matched the margins on the letters. The proof arrived like small stones in a pile. Each stone looked meaningless alone. Together they made a cairn. People at the back shifted. Some looked away. Some leaned forward. My mother sat still until the end. Then she stood with a folder and read aloud words she had not expected to say in public. She read a line where she had written my name softly and then said she did not see the changes. The room folded in a hush. A man from the back stood and said, "This is private." Another voice said, "He is hurting." A reporter asked for a copy of the receipts. The meeting moved from charity to a question of private conduct and ownership. Eldon stood then. He had been at the back wearing a plain jacket. He raised his hand like a man lifting a tool. He told the room he worked for a firm that audited family trusts. He had a badge and a subpoena. He said the trust had been altered without the required witnesses. The word subpoena fell like a hammer. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He had prepared for applause but not for legal procedures. The evidence stacked, an unsigned page here. A date altered there. The law was not a blade but a lever that moves heavy things. Marcus left the hall with his jaw tight. People shifted into small conversations like vultures looking for scraps. I stood on the stage feeling like a man whose name had been called loudly in a crowd. My mother came and took my hand. Her fingers were thin and warm. She said she had not known. The phrase felt like first aid. After the meeting, lawyers came and asked questions. There were calls and dates and filings. Marcus faded into the role of man who had to explain himself in rooms that smelled of paper and fatigue. The town talked in low voices about loyalty and privilege. Old neighbors called me and said they were sorry. People who had once waved now squinted from behind curtains. Fame by small scandal is a strange thing. My mother asked me to move back into the house upstairs in the room I had once slept in. She made me coffee and set a small place at the table. My name appeared on a place card once and it made the cup feel heavier and safer. I opened a small repair shop because I had always known how to fix things. I fixed broken things for people who had been overlooked. Marcus faced hearings and the trust was voided pending review. He lost immediate control of accounts and keys. The town papers wrote with careful distance. I watched the paperwork like someone watching a machine find its balance. The work was slow. Vindication does not come as a trumpet, it comes as a slow rewiring. I had moments of surprise. People I thought were allies stepped away. Some apologized and then retreated. Vanessa stayed. Eldon showed up at hearings with a small pile of documents. My sister came around with meals and plates and a voice that tried to be steady. She said she had been told parts of the story and did not know. The hearing room smelled of old leather and human impatience. Marcus sat across from me with the same jaw but a face unraveling at the seams. He tried to tell a story about protecting a legacy. He used words about contribution and sacrifice. The judge had seen enough families to hear the pattern. Small favors become walls when someone decides to build a business from them. Evidence slid onto the table in pages. The altered signature was examined. A vendor swore she had been asked to change instructions. A notary admitted she had not been present. The law moved through the room and made visible the small edits someone had made in ink. I listened to Marcus in cross-examination. His voice held a crack where certainty had once been. He spoke about family as if it were a ledger. He had framed choices as protection. The narrative he had built in his own head was one of stewardship but not of cruelty. He had believed the ledger would heal him. I thought of the note outside the wedding hall and the thin paper edge against my palm. I thought of the receipt with the clean cross out and the fingerprint on the corner. I thought of the wooden box under ledgers in a study. These small things had become proof in a room that likes proofs. I had been invisible until I learned to keep receipts. People asked me why I had come forward. The answer was embarrassingly simple. I wanted my name to exist on paper again. I wanted my mother to remember the son she counted when she wrote the family list. I wanted to stop being the footnote in a document. Marcus left the courthouse pale. He had lost control of accounts and keys while the court ordered an audit. The town talked in small pieces and then forgot in smaller ones. Public memory is short, private repair is longer. I opened my shop in a strip with a cracked sign. I hung a lamp in the window and learned to take payments and to keep receipts. I fixed a woman's porch swing and a man's carburetor. I patched rust and redraws and listened to stories of being passed over. The work kept my hands busy and my head clear. I learned to tell the difference between a broken bolt and a broken promise. One you can fix with a wrench and the other you track with paper. The victory was not clean. Marcus called and left a message. I listened to it once and then put the recording into a folder with other things I did not want to open. He said he thought he was protecting us. His voice held a regret that sounded like a man learning new weight. Months passed and the audit continued. There were filings and signatures and more questions. My mother sat with me at the table and we went through papers. She found notes she had not placed. She found a line where she had meant to add my name and then someone had erased it. Her hands shook when she told me. She said she had been proud in the wrong way and the word came slow. I forgave her because she fell apart in the right way. I began to repair the house slowly. I fixed a window latch. I painted a closet. I put my tools away with a new order. My mother watched me tighten screws and she learned the language of small repairs. She tasted apology. I wanted more than a name on paper. I wanted the sense that memory could be skilled into truth. I kept receipts for everything I bought for the house. I kept photos of ledger pages. I backed up recordings and sent copies to people I trusted. The habits of a nameless life became the tools of proof. People came with opinions and with questions. Some wanted to know why I had not fought sooner. Others said families end like this. I had no easy answer except the one that felt like a raw truth. I had to learn how to be visible without losing myself. I had to learn how to keep my voice from becoming an accusation that ate me alive. Vanessa and Eldon and a small few stood with me when the hearing returned. The town came to see a spectacle and left with a lesson. The law in its slow way revealed the edits. The notary admitted she had not seen witnesses sign. Someone found a paper that showed a date had been overwritten. The court ruled the altered pages void and ordered a full accounting. Marcus faced consequences for the edits. The judge said words about duty and honesty and then called for a recess. The ruling was not a crown, it was a clearing. After the ruling, Marcus stopped answering calls. He left the house for a while and then came back in the way people come back to rooms they have soiled. He asked to meet. I met him in a diner that smelled like coffee and frying oil. He wore last year's jacket and he spoke in a voice that had been worn thin. He said he wanted to protect a family image. He said he had been afraid of scarcity and of being small. He said he had been wrong. He asked if I would accept an apology. I looked at him across the table and saw the boy who had wanted applause and the man who had learned the trade of erasing. I listened to the apology and I kept my hands on the coffee cup. I told him a few things about what had been done. I told him the study and the box and the words in the margins. I told him how small pieces had piled and how they had moved a house. He did not argue. He looked tired. I told him my name had to mean something and that meant paperwork and conversation and slow repair. My mother asked me to come back upstairs for good. I moved my box and my tools and a lamp. The room smelled of dust and memory. I placed a place card with my name at the table and the card was thin and ordinary, but when I sat my hands matched the cup in a way they had not in a long time. The shop did well enough. I fixed things for people who had been ignored. I built a ledger of town goodwill and debt. People who had watched me from behind curtains now came with small jobs and thanks. My hands stayed busy and my eyes stayed open. I think about the note sometimes. I keep it folded in a book. It used to burn my pocket. Now it is paper. The receipt that started the whole thing lives in a drawer. I look at it when I need proof that a small thing can move a house. Sometimes I imagine the crowd at the town hall. I remember the hush when a woman read a line she had not seen before. I remember Eldon standing with his badge. I remember the way the law felt like a lever and not a blade. I remember Vanessa's voice steady when she told the room about a phone call. I also remember my hands on a camera and the bridesmaids smiling. I remember the light through the glass door and how easy it would have been to walk in and demand a place. I remember why I did not. I remember why I watched and collected and waited. I wanted to be sure before I moved. I wanted proof that the ledger had been altered. People ask if I feel vindicated. The truth is complicated. Vindication felt like a table where my name sat. It felt like a mother who said she had not known. It felt like a set of receipts and recordings and a law that made small edits visible. If you are watching this as if you were in the crowd, I want you to take one thing away. Keep receipts. Keep keys that no one thinks matter. Keep friends who will speak for you. Learn to notice the small edges of things. Being invisible is training in endurance. It teaches you how people behave when nobody looks. I am not a martyr, I am not a hero. I am the brother who learned to keep records and to wait. I opened a shop and a life and a ledger where small favors could be tallied and returned. My mother and I have long talks now about memory and names. Marcus left a message that I put in a drawer and closed. The last scene is ordinary, a table, a plate, my name on a card. I stand sometimes at the window and watch the lane and think about the gravel that cut my shoes the night I opened the envelope. The cut healed. The paper rests in a drawer, the truth stacked up slowly like wood until it moved the house. If you find a thin receipt or a crossed-out name, hold it like evidence. It may be small, but small things pile. They make weight. They move doors, they change who gets to sit at the table. Keep your eyes open. Keep your hands steady, keep your